war in Ukraine has been on for 415 days. Who's winning it? Not Russia, certainly not Ukraine. It's the US oil companies. They're the ones winning this war. And tonight we'll show you how. As thousands die on the battlefield, American oil companies are raking in billions. How many, you ask? Try 200 billion. And this is just in profits. US oil companies have reaped $200 billion in pure profits. The war in Ukraine shook up the energy market because the West, led by the US, sanctioned Russian oil supplies, Russian energy supplies. They restricted Russian oil and gas supplies. And US companies were the clear beneficiaries of this. We're talking about data from November 2022. That was more than 4 months ago. The earnings are still on. They're still milking this war and sharing the spoils. Oil companies are cutting big checks to their executives. Case in point, ExxonMobil. It's one of the world's biggest energy companies. Its chief executive is a man called Darren Woods. He's just got a pay raise. A dream increment, if you ask me. Woods got a salary hike of 52%. So now his salary will be almost $36 million. That's close to 300 crore rupees, the salary of a CEO. Plus there's a bonus and stock rewards. And there's a hike there too. An 80% hike, 80%. So his bonus and stock rewards will go up by 80%. And it's not like ExxonMobil is hiding any of this. The company says the bumper pay for Woods was quote-unquote reflective of record earnings and stock price performance. In other words, they're making big money. So let's pull up those numbers. Let's look at how ExxonMobil has been doing. In 2022, the company made $56 billion in profits. That's $6.3 million every hour in profits. I'll repeat that, $6.3 million every hour in profits. The shares of the company have outperformed its peers, and that too by a wide margin. They climbed by 160% last year. This is so brazen that even the US president had to speak out. Joe Biden said ExxonMobil is making more money than God. He said the profiteering by oil companies was outrageous.
Oil companies' record profits today are not because they're doing something new or innovative. Their profits are a windfall of war. The windfall from the brutal conflict that's ravaging Ukraine and hurting tens of millions of people around the globe.
But ExxonMobil is not the only company. Other major oil producers are also minting money, like Chevron. That's another major US oil producer, also the main rival of Exxon. Chevron made a record $36.5 billion. The European peers are making big profits too, like Shell. Shell announced its biggest profits in history. This company, Shell, has been around for 115 years. And last year, they made their biggest profits ever. Profits worth $39.9 billion. British giant BP was not too far behind. It has reported $27.7 billion in profit. And these are all big numbers. They confirm what the world has known for a while. Oil companies capitalize on instability, and they are profiting from pain. American oil companies are masters of this art. Time and again, as the American war machine enters conflicts, American oil companies take home big checks. You may remember the war in Iraq. The US went to war in Iraq by selling a lie. They said Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein had WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, and that they pose a threat to the world. So America invaded Iraq ostensibly to save the world and bring democracy. As it happened, they only helped themselves. Iraq was devastated. Saddam Hussein was killed. The Americans did not find any weapons of mass destruction, but they did find lots of oil. After the invasion, a slew of American oil companies rushed to Iraq, from ExxonMobil to Chevron and Halliburton. They all got a share of the loot. They all got access to Iraq's oil. And in the years since, American officials have admitted this. They've confirmed that the war was only about Iraq's oil. I have some statements. The first one is from General John Abizadeh. He's the former head of US Central Command and military operations in Iraq. Listen to what he said, and I'm quoting, "Of course, it's about oil. We can't really deny that." Next, we have Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the US Federal Reserve. He wrote this in his memoir, and I'm quoting again, "I'm saddened that it is politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows: the Iraq war is largely about oil. Then there's Chuck Hagel, a former US Defense Secretary. This is what he said: people say we're not fighting for oil. Of course we are. He said it in as many words: Iraqi lives are just collateral damage. And this story is not over. It's repeating itself in Ukraine. They're feeding another war and filling the coffers of US oil companies.